Chemicals used during Denmark's mink operation. New documents reveal major gaps between reported data, actual use, and environmental classification. New analysis of internal government documents reveals significant inconsistencies in Denmark's handling of chemical disinfectants during the mink culling operation in 2020 to 2021. While this oil around mink burial sites was expected to be biologically contaminated, large quantities of decomposing organic material will naturally affect surrounding soil and groundwater. The documents show that the state also used substantial amounts of chemical disinfectants, without transparently documenting what products were used, how much, or why. Across multiple official documents, the terms liquids, disinfection liquids, and chemical liquids appear at least 11 times, yet no product names are provided. At the same time, internal calculations show that authorities officially reported the use of only 1,171.15 kg of chemicals, while the actual amount could be several tons. The volume described in operational reports simply does not match the quantities presented in official disclosures. Furthermore, new evidence suggests that chemical planning and procurement began months before the official political decision to cull all mink was made on November 4, 2020. This raises a series of critical questions. Why are chemicals consistently referred to only as liquids, never by their actual names? Why is there a major discrepancy between the reported and the likely actual quantities used? Which chemical products were applied, under what legal authority, and based on which risk assessments? Why did preparations involving chemicals take place before the political decision? Why is mink's oil classified as chemically contaminated if the disinfectants were supposedly harmless? When read together, the documents show a pattern of unclear terminology, inconsistent documentation, gaps in environmental assessments, and unexplained irregularities in the timeline. 200,000 tons of contaminated mink's oil. How many truckloads is that? Authorities have confirmed that approximately 200,000 tons of mink-contaminated oil have been excavated and transported away from burial sites. To visualize this amount, a typical large oil transport truck carries 18-20 tons per load. 200,000 tons therefore require 11,111 truckloads. Lined up end to end, these trucks would form a convoy stretching over 150 kilometers, roughly from Copenhagen to Odense. This is one of Denmark's largest oil removal operations in modern history. If disinfectants were as harmless as repeatedly stated, the public deserves a clear explanation for why such unprecedented oil removal was necessary, and why no transparent chemical documentation accompanies it. Test tube. The true mystery is not the biological contamination, it is the chemical one. Biological contamination from decaying mink is predictable and requires standard environmental handling. But the chemical component is where important questions remain unanswered. What quantities of chemical disinfectants were used? Why are they never named in official documents? Why were no environmental tests made for oxidizers, surfactants, persulfates or related compounds? Why does the documentation not match internal operational descriptions? Why this matters? This case is not about assigning blame. It is about transparency, environmental safety, and equality before the law. Citizens must be able to trust that chemical use is properly recorded. Environmental risks are assessed openly. Decisions taken under pressure are still documented responsibly. Public authorities comply with both Danish and EU environmental disclosure laws. We are therefore submitting a series of legally precise information requests to all relevant authorities to clarify which chemicals were used, how much was used, why documentation differs, what risk assessments were made, whether legal requirements were followed. 3. The questions no authority can escape. These 12 questions are legally impossible to avoid or circumvent. Question 1. What precise data demonstrated that Cluster 5 existed as of November 4, 2020? Question 2. Why were actions taken based on a virus that had not been detected after September 2020? Question 3. Where is the documentation for vaccine resistance? Which laboratory produced it? Question 4. Why did SSI state at the press conference that the vaccine still worked? Question 5. Which legal authority was used when the decision was made before political approval was obtained? Question 6. Why was the emergency response system activated in June 2020, if the decision was supposedly taken in November. Question 7. Why are chemical agents referred to as liquids in internal documents? Question 8. Why was the consumption stated as 1,171 kilograms of chemicals when the actual usage was measured in tons? Question 9. Which chemicals caused mink's oil to be classified as contaminated? Question 10. Why are there no soil or water samples analyzing oxidizing agents, virkon components? Question 11. If no chemicals were used, why did 200,000 tons of soil have to be removed? Question 12. Which professional body recommended the acute nationwide cull, and at what point during the year? 4. The legal timeline that proves there was no emergency situation. Everything was planned months in advance. Below is the shortest and strongest version. Timeline evidence of the absence of an emergency situation. June 2020. The Danish Emergency Management Agency, Beredskabet, creates operational cases concerning the mink response. Documented in Case File 2025, 6248. Summer 2020. A mink contingency structure is established between agencies, BRS, FVST, Armed Forces. Supported by internal documentation. August-September 2020. Cluster 5 appears, but disappears again. Last detected in September. October 2020. No new mutations detected. Yet planning of logistics, equipment and chemical agents continues. November 2, 2020. Internal emails show that the decision had already been made. November 4, 2020. The press conference publicly announces the decision. It is presented as acute and necessary. But the decision had already been operationally executed. No legal authority existed. The mutation no longer existed. The risk was theoretical, not documented. Emergency structures had been active for 5 months. Conclusion. The so-called speed principle was not a fact, it was a political construction. Mink industry was not an okay industry, it was the way they were closed down which had many consequences for the owners of these, financially, health-wise, suicide, personal bankruptcies closed down on a theory. Let this video go viral so that citizens in Denmark can shed light on this matter internationally. The potential the groundwater has been put in danger by the state itself. This is in the public interest. The environment, public trust, and democratic accountability depend on complete transparency, especially in cases of this scale. We are anonymous, we are legion, we never forget.